All right, United States Army Inspector General School Teaching and Training Guide, Department of Army Inspector General Agency Training Division, 550, 5500 21st Street, Suite 2305, Fort Belvedere, Virginia, 22060, 5935, May 2010. Teaching and Training Guide, Table of Contents, Chapter 1, Overview, Section 1, Introduction, 1, 2, The Role of the IG in Teaching and Training, Chapter 2, Teaching and Training Embedded Functions, Section 2, 1, Teaching and Training Inspections, Section 2, 2, Teaching and Training Assistance, Section 2, 3, Teaching and Training Investigations, Section 3, Teaching and Training and Independent Function, Section 3, 1, Direct Teaching and Training Opportunities, Section 3, 2, Staff Assistance Visits, Section 3, 3, Readiness Assistant Visits and Decks. All right, Chapter 1, Overview, Section 1, Introduction, 1, 2, The Role of the IG in Teaching and Training. Okay, Section 1, Introduction. This guide, the purpose of this guide will help the instructors, Inspector General's IG at all levels of performing teaching and training separate function for the Army Inspector General system. In past several decades, the teaching and training served as the principle of the invisible fourth pillar of the Inspector General system, embedded with the top three of the three in the Inspector General's function for the inspection, assistance for the investigation, but high operational tempo of the current Army with a shift to the brigade-centric operational structure, the advent of the Army Force Generation model with the complex training readiness authority with various commands that have been pushed the teaching and training to the forefront of the Inspector General functions. And historically, Inspector General has served as a substitute for the experience of the historical constant has taken on new relevance in today's operation environment. Inspection had been more with the dominant with the two of the Inspector General proactive function for the teaching and training has now become, in many situations, Inspector General function best suited with the enhanced the readiness, warfighting capability of the organization, especially with the corps and division levels, as well with the save of the U.S. Army reserve units of the preparing mobilization. The guide is designed to assist the Inspector General in the selection of the various kinds of the teaching and training approaches that can be most effective in enhancing the readiness of warfighting capability of all the organization at all echelons, provided with useful tips, ideas, formats that can take the coursework out of the Inspector General role of the critical, clearly independent function. Army Regulation 21. Inspector General activities procedure with this guide with support for the reinforcement of Army Inspector General policy with the teaching and training is found in Chapter 4 of the Army Regulation 21. Proponent, the Department of the Army Inspector General Training Division, or SAIGTR, the proponent of the guide, have suggested that improving the refining this guide. Please send to the U.S. Army Inspector General School, attend SAIGTR, 5500 21st Street, Suite 2305, Fort Belvedere, Virginia, 22060-5935. You may also call the school at 703-805-3900 or DSN 655. 3900 updates. The U.S. Inspector General will update with the guide with a periodically necessary with the school to send the update note to the Army of the Command, Army Service Component Command with the direct reporting units of the Inspector General Office, further dissemination to all of the Army Inspector General offices. Further, the date in the upper right-hand corner of each of the pages of the guide to determine if you have the most current version. Format. Chapter 1 addresses the teaching and training function of the perspective that describes the Inspector General's specific role of the requirements within this function. Chapter 2 addresses the teaching and training embedded with the function will separate with the section for the inspection, assistant, and investigation. Lastly, Chapter 3 describes the teaching and training independent function with a direct opportunity. The Inspector General teaching and training staff assistants visit the both for the Inspector General and non-Inspector General staff sections, and readiness assistant visits as part of the Air Force ARFORGEN. Format. For the sample of the memorandum, the guide contains the numerous samples of the memorandum that generally adhere to the format requirements outlined with the Army Regulation 2550. Preparing, managing correspondence, however, in the effort for the safest space for the paper, some of the required size of the spacing have been compressed. Refer to the Army Regulation 2550 for the precise format and specifications. All right, Section 1-2, the role of the Inspector General in the teaching and training. For the purpose of the section, explain for the Inspector General role of the teaching and training with the Inspector General function. Major General Brown von Steuben established the teaching and training in March 1778 with the first of the Army Inspector General function, ultimately with the bedrock for the Army Inspector General system. Since this time, the Inspector General function, inspection, and assistance with investigation have all relied on teaching and training as the foundation for the Army Inspector General system. With the signature approach for the Inspector of all Inspector Generals, after the leader of the Inspector General also trained with although with policy development and no longer part of the Inspector General responsibility, training commanders, soldiers, civilians, even if the family member on the current Army policy underlying the motive of every action taken by an Inspector General only by the ensuring the member of the Army now, with the understanding the current Army policy can Inspector Generals truly help our Army achieve the operating efficiency required for the all Army systems. That von Steuben model with a warfighting readiness for the guide's philosophy of all of the Army. Inspector General of the model built in the upper knowing understanding of the Army's way of the operating of the administrator itself. The role of the Inspector General promulgating knowledge of the Army system. Policy procedures have never been more important than in today's global war on terror and other overseas contingency operations. All right, the Inspector General Regulatory Responsibility of the Teaching and Training Army Regulation 21, Chapter 1, Chapter 4, Draft of the Teaching and Training of this role for the embedded and independent function with the embedded function with the teaching and training allow for the Inspector General to profess standards, explain system of the process, teach for the current Army doctrine, while the Inspector General performing the mission critical functions of the inspection, assisting with the investigation, independent function, Inspector General approach for the teaching training directly by serving the educator for the Army standards and doctrine to include the teaching used on how to rebuild and reestablish systems that will have withered due to the high operational tempo inherent to both approach for the teaching and training. Our Inspector General regulatory requirements for the function are found within paragraph 14B6. The paragraph charges for the Inspector General to teach and train by teaching policy, procedures, systems, processes to help organization activities improve operation efficiency, accomplish command objective, to disseminate information and initiative, ideas, lessons learned, teaching action, training action. Inspector General temporary assistant with Inspector General administrative support personnel who are not required for the TIGS. The use of the instruction materials provided by the school assistant leaders are level of teaching of the Army professional ethical warrior ethos and the Army civilian corps creed. The following paragraphs will address the responsibility in greater detail. Teaching policy, procedures, the system, and profit. The teaching policy, procedures, and system process that traditionally fall under the embedded approach to teaching and training will to include the disseminating of the innovative idea of the good news story with the lesson learned, what is conducting the inspection, performing the assistant for the conducting an investigation. The Inspector General always to take the opportunity to explain with the teacher for the current policy, to explain how specific system function are designed to share the lessons learned for the other units for the got it right, with the provide informational updates on the new for the emerging Army policy, the doctrine and approach of the activity incorporating the teaching and the training of the Inspector General functions was part of a paradigm shifting initiated with the Lieutenant General Richard J. Terfree of the Inspector General from 1977 to 1988. The Inspector General out of the black hat inspection business to the punitive side of the old Inspector General worked more effectively. The white hat approach not just in the inspection but all for the Inspector General. The Lieutenant General Terfree saw that more than value when the Inspector General not simply identified the problem areas, but also helping on spot correction, showing them how to improve the non-threat of the punitive action. The paradigm shift that they began with a 30 days ago study, but brought the teaching and training back to the forefront with one of the Inspector General's most effective proactive functions. All right, training other than the Inspector General. Although the training in TIGs have the responsibility for the training qualified detail of the assistant for the Inspector General of the U.S. Army Inspector General System, or TIGS, is the field for the responsibility for training of the three categories of the Inspector General, temporary assistant of the Inspector General, acting Inspector General, administrative support personnel. The extent with the Command Inspector General elected to train with the category of the Inspector General Army Inspector General depends upon the requirements placed on these individuals. However, since each of these persons will provide the Inspector General records have the access to the Inspector General net, commanding Inspector General must ensure that they receive the training minimum of the following in two areas. The Inspector General tenet of the confidentiality Army Regulation 21. Paragraph 112, limitation restriction placed on the use of the inspection records, Inspector General records, Army Regulation 21, Chapter 3. The Army Inspector General School maintains all the school instructional material references to the Army Inspector School public website of the tigu-online.iganet.army.mil, tigu_online/index.html, so that the Inspector General have the ready access anywhere in the world and the material required for the training, the temporary assist for the Inspector General, acting Inspector General, administrative support personnel accessing the website does not require the Inspector General net except in certain circumstances that depend upon the timely instruction from the school can travel to specific locations to conduct the training on these or other aspects of the Inspector General. Foundation for the Army Ethic. Paragraph 26 of the Army Regulation 600-100, Army Leadership of the Inspector and Inspector General School with the assisting of the band of the teaching and training leader of the fundamental of the Army Ethic with the training of the Army Regulation 21. Paragraph 14B6 with the and charge of the Inspector General with the Army, the Inspector General system with the same requirements of the Army Ship with the ethics defined in the paragraph 15 of the Army Regulation 600-100 includes the Army value of loyalty, duty, respect, self-service, honor, integrity, personal courage of the warrior ethos, the soldier's creed, the civilian creed, the requirements to assist the leaders at all levels of the teaching and training for the fundamental of the Army ethical, clearly placing the Inspector General the proverbial class house and makes ethical role models of all Inspector Generals. Inspector Generals actively with the trained soldiers at all levels on this ethic, but can equally effective the more passive role for the personally emulating this effect. Teaching the Inspector General concept and system, paragraph 41B of the Army Regulation 21, charged with the Inspector General with the teaching and training with the direction of the directing the authority of the commander and soldiers at level of the intent, function, the capability of the Army Inspector General system. Will the commanders and soldiers at level of the known, they now known or understand how the Inspector General works, the Inspector General will define the supported population more receptive to the Inspector General efforts for the improvement of the readiness of warfighting within the command. The most important aspect of the training to demonstrate with the command of the Inspector General the use of all of the members of the organization co-partnering with the collective efforts of the improvement of the readiness of the Inspector General, seek the effective forms to which for the teach whose command soldiers, Inspector General doing business, how the leaders at all levels that can be both supported by with the Inspector General. Here are some of the examples affecting teaching training value for the Inspector General concept system. Local company commander of the first sergeant, course of the officer and NCO, professional development programs, newcomer and processing briefing, pre-command course of the Inspector General School with the instructional material of the Inspector General concept and systems of the Inspector General School, public website, http://tgiu-online.ignet army.mil/tigu/online/index.htm. The form of the site with the presentation you for the school as well as the self-paced web-based tutorials designed specifically inform the command of the Inspector General System. CD-ROMs version of these tutorials are available on request of the School Information Technologies Specialist Commercial 703-805-3903 or DSN 655 and 3903. The teaching of the Organizational Inspection Program or OIP, paragraph 14F of the Army Regulation 1201, Army Inspection Policy, charging the Inspector General with the evaluate the commander of the staff of the Army Inspection Policy, the Army Inspection General School proponent of the Army Regulation 1201, all Inspector General local proponents on the experts of the regulation with the advisory responsibility translate into the responsible for the Inspector General. Inspector General may take the time to reteach with the commanders on the staff that not simply with the requirements of the Army inspection, but also with the program's internal dynamic and how the command and staff of the Inspector General, each with a different approach for the compliance with the various versus systematic component complement each other, making the program effective and the effect of the command of the staff of the Inspection General with the compliance base for the inspection generate the turns over the allow the Inspector General to identify systematic issues with the command and with the commander's authority act on them by conducting a special systematic inspection. The Army Inspection in General School maintains the organizational inspection program tutorial specifically with the commander of the Army Inspection General School public website. Once again, the same website as mentioned throughout the section of the Army Inspection website with the organizational inspection program related to the reference of the inspection guide with the side of presentation for the youth of the commander of their staff on the operations organizational inspection program and the regulation of the charge of the Inspector General, the training inspectors to conduct the command staff the inspection, all you for the general inspection checklist recommended in Appendix D of the inspection guide. Inspector Generals must be carefully with the teaching of the training role of the command and staff the inspection, but does not become the inspection role since such of the activity of it would violate the Regulation 1201, result of the information gathered becoming the Inspector General record subject for the provision, Chapter 3, Army Regulation 21. See the inspection guide for the further information on the organizational inspection program. All right, Chapter 2, teaching and training embedded functions.